represent them over this necessary business. These qualified men were then selected and were appointed by the apostles. Acts 6. 1-6. Stephen therefore received an appointment to a ministry in a special way. He and the 6 others appointed over this necessary business, the distribution of food or supplies, may have already been older men, or overseers. These men were men full of spirit and wisdom, which this particular emergency required, for it was not only the mechanical distribution of food or supplies possibly in the form of grains and other staples, but also a matter of administration. The duties may have called for these men to handle buying, keeping of records, and so forth. So, although such work, if on a lesser scale or under other circumstances, might have been such as would be handled by a diaconus, a ministerial servant, not by an overseer, or older man, the situation here was a sensitive one, difficulty and differences already existing in the congregation. Therefore it required men of notable judgment, discretion, understanding, and experience. Stephen's defense before the Sanhedrin indicates his qualifications. While taking care of these appointed ministerial duties, Stephen vigorously continued his Christian preaching. The chronicler Luke reports that Stephen, full of graciousness and power, and performing great portents and signs among the people, was bitterly opposed by Jews of the so-called synagogue of the freedmen and o textoi acute miritra longo, Stoics 1035 to death. Just before falling asleep in death, Stephen prayed, Jehovah, do not charge this sin against them. Certain reverent men came and gave him a burial and lamented his death. Great persecution then broke out against the Christians, scattering them though the apostles remained in Jerusalem and resulting in the spreading of the good news. Acts 6. 8. 8. 2. 11. 19. 22. 20. Stephen's account delivered before the Sanhedrin includes a number of facts concerning Jewish history that are not found in the Hebrew Scriptures. Moses' Egyptian education, his age of 40 when he fled Egypt, the 40-year duration of his stay in Midian before returning to Egypt, and the role of angels in giving the Mosaic law. Acts 7. 22, 23, 30, 32, 38. Stephen was the first to bear witness that he had seen, in a special vision, Jesus returned to heaven and at the right hand of God, as prophesied at Psalm 110. 1. Acts 7. 55, 56. Steward. One placed in charge of the household or certain property belonging to another. The Hebrew word somidl.kan is rendered stewardessa 22. 15. Momidl.shul, which means one managing, likewise refers to a steward. GE 24. 2. FTN the Greek omidl.nomos steward can also be translated house manager. Lu 12. 42. FTN. A steward might be a freeman or a trusted slave. The unrighteous steward to whom Jesus referred in one of his illustrations seems to be pictured as a freeman. Lu 16. 1, 2, 4 kings, and many other persons of wealth or distinction, had a steward, and men varied as to the degree of authority they gave to their stewards. The Greek word imiddle.pytromidl.pos, man in charge, is closely related in meaning, since a steward often had oversight of the house as well as the other servants and the property, and at times over business affairs. 4. 1-3. Lu 16. 1-3. Abraham had a faithful servant, Eliezer of Damascus, as man in charge of his extensive belongings, which consisted of great wealth of livestock and, at one time, many slaves, although Abraham held no land possessions other than a burial plot. GE 13. 2. 14. 14. 15. 2. 23. 17-20. Acts 7. 4, 5 Joseph, as a slave in Egypt, came to be in charge of Potiphar's house. GE 39. 1-4, 8, 9 later, he too had a steward. GE 44. 4 King Elah of Israel had a man over his household in Tirzah. This was likely a custom also of the other ancient kings. 1 Kah 16. 9 Shebna was steward over the king's house in the days of King Hezekiah of Judah, but he was unfaithful and was replaced by Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, Issa 22. 15, 20, 21. In the Christian Greek scriptures we find that Herod Antipas had a man in charge of his house. This man's wife ministered from her belongings to Jesus. Luke 8. 3. Jesus, in an illustration, referred to a man in charge of the vineyard laborers who paid them at the end of the day. Mount 20. 8. The responsibilities and administrative duties of a steward suitably describe the ministry entrusted by Jehovah God to the Christian. In Jesus' prophecy concerning the last days, he describes the faithful and discreet slave, who also serves as a steward for him, a manager over the household of faith, to give spiritual food at the proper time. Mount 24. 45. Luke 12. 42-44. Overseers in the Christian congregation are stewards, and faithfulness is strictly required of them. Tit 1. 7. 1 Co 4. 1, 2 Paul, as an apostle,